Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey friends, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. This is the Bible study that is power-packed with Bible vitamins and Bible minerals. Come on in and sit down, it's good for you. Promise it's organic and fresh every single day. Daily Dose Radio. This week we're studying the second piece of Psalm 18, the verses 11 through 20. We did 1 through 10 last week, and of course this is what I'm calling David's great confession of faith. It affects so much of the Psalter and the Old Testament, and looks forward to the New Testament because there's some messianic elements here as well. Looking at Psalm 18, I've broken it up into parts. We're going to do 10 verses a week. This is our second week then in Psalm 18. So let me read for you today. I'm going to do verses 11 and 12 today. Let me read those. This is my translation. He constituted darkness as his hiding place surrounding him, his glorious tent, dark waters and thick clouds. The brightness before him, his thick clouds passed by, hail and coals of fire. Well, that's verses 11 and 12 here in Psalm 18. Now, this picks up on what we talked about last time. Last time we were in the theophany section, and again, we're here in the theophany section. It's continuing. We started there in verse 7. The earth shook and quaked, the foundations of the mountains were shaken, and so forth. We had all that all the way down through verse 10. In verse 10, he's riding a cherub, and he's flying, and he's on the wings of the wind. Why is that? Why do we have this activity of God going on here in the psalm? Because the psalmist prayed. And you'll remember his prayer was in verse 6, "In my distress I called on my Lord, and my cry came into his temple, and before him it came into his ears." So his request has come to the Lord, and now the Lord is acting. He's moving because the psalmist, David, has prayed. We continue now this theophany. Here in verse 11, he constituted darkness as his hiding place surrounding him, his glorious tent. Now, in some of your translations, you'll have the word pavilion here. His pavilion, and that's beautiful. I love pavilion. I wanted to do something a little different. So I translated this, his glorious tent, is that campaign tent that he has pitched as a warrior. It's the king's tent. It's gilded and golden and beautiful and sets high up above all others. It's the one that has the court in it. It's the one where the throne is. This is the beautiful tent. That's why I've translated it, his glorious tent. Could also be rightly translated pavilion, but I love this translation, his glorious tent, dark waters and thick clouds. So we have the darkness, number 1, the dark waters, number 2, the thick clouds, number 3. All of this is surrounding God. Thick clouds show up again in verse 12 because the brightness was before him as well as the darkness. So brightness is the fourth element. We have thick clouds again, and then hail and coals of fire. And that acts like a refrain here. This is the arsenal of God, as Spurgeon calls it, his hailstones and coals of fire. So he's constituted darkness, and before him is brightness. What is that? Does that take you back to anything? Oh, certainly it should. This takes you back to creation, because who is this God that David has prayed to? This is none other than the creator of heaven and earth. And yes, he can constitute his glorious tent in whatever way he wants because he is the maker of all things. He makes darkness, he makes brightness, he makes hailstones, he makes thick clouds, he makes dark waters, he makes fire. All of it is God ordained and God created, and he is glorified in this view of him. So David says, this is the one who's coming to answer my prayer. It's not just anybody. No. This is the one whose glorious tent rests on dark waters. The Lord God himself. Tomorrow, join me. We're going to look at verses 13 and 14 and have more of this beautiful theophany on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.